when it comes to our emotions, people, and this is what I've noticed has been a trend a little bit actually, people have noticed that they feel afraid or ashamed to even bring up their emotions, right? Going back to what I mentioned a little bit before, the sense of like confidence kind of dwindles down when we go through traumatic experiences or just hardships in life. We don't feel like our voice is so powerful. And so a lot of the work that I like to do is bring that power in people's voice and so they can find that and discover that.
Welcome to the Conscious Solutions Podcast, where we highlight leaders, founders, and practitioners who are shaping the future of healing, recovery, and human transformation. This show is dedicated to the people who help the people, the innovators building clinics, nonprofits, recovery programs, wellness practices, and community-based solutions that create real impact in the world. I'm Brandon Barclay, and over the last 8 years, I've had the privilege of working alongside organizations across the alternative wellness and mental health landscape, from retreat centers and practitioners to nonprofits, recovery programs, and community-driven initiatives. And one thing has become very clear. The people doing the most meaningful work are often the ones with the least support, visibility, and resources. And this podcast is designed to change that by sharing the real stories, lessons, challenges, and breakthroughs from the leaders on the front line of human healing. Thanks for being here, and let's dive into today's conversation. So you're listening, or you might be watching, the Conscious Solutions Podcast. I'm your host, Brandon Barclay, and today I'm joined by Hadiya Harris, a therapist with My Therapy NYC, whose work integrates existential, behavioral, mindfulness, and trauma-informed approaches. In this conversation, we'll explore Hadiya's journey into therapeutic care, her experience working within organizational systems of care, and what it means to practice with voice, identity, and intention. For those tuning in for the first time, we are Conscious Solutions, and we work with therapy practices, wellness organizations, and care-centered teams to improve operations, systems, and sustainability. Today's conversation offers a practitioner's perspective from inside those systems. So first to say, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate the depth, intentionality, and clarity that you bring to your work. And maybe start with sharing with our listeners where you're joining from today.
Oh. Well, hello. Thank you so much for having me, Ray. So I am joining in. Actually, I reside in Jersey City, right? So I'm in Jersey City, New Jersey right now, but I work at the practice of My Therapy NYC, and that's located in a financial district.
And I want to know the story, right? I think everybody that's in a healing or helping practice has an interesting way that they ended up there. Where does your story begin? Like, what led you into the field of therapy and trauma-informed work?
Yeah. So as you know, right, trauma informed work is definitely something that I have a focus on, right? But also tied into that has been this like self-esteem and confidence. And I think it started back like when I was also younger, right? Being in spaces, right? And also just as a person who identifies as a person of color, not many places wanted us to feel heard or seen as much, right? And so I had a family upbringing that made sure that they instilled this power in me that necessarily mentioned that sense of like my voice is powerful. It does need to be heard. I do have a say in things, right? And kind of just being able to kind of innate that responsibility of making sure that I'm being heard and seen in many different places, right? And so on top of that, and thank you so much for my family for doing that, but on top of being able to do that also, I also came across people too, like maybe friends or just different other environments, academia too. It also started in college and high school as well. Being an athlete is all the things, right? So all these nerves and anxieties and depression episodes that people were having around me, or also maybe even identifying it with myself, kind of just led to the point of realizing that, wait, we don't feel like our voice is powerful. We don't feel like we deserve to be expressing our emotions and our care, right? And so when people were expressing to me about their trauma and things of that nature, I was like, oh my God, wait, I'm providing the space and I think this is beautiful too, but I feel like I could learn on this. Like I could build up on this skill here, right? And so it led me to wanting to dive into undergrad and getting into psychology, right? Getting my master's in mental health counseling and rehabilitation, right? So kind of just focusing on those key points of like, wait, how can I provide more of a space for others who don't feel heard or seen, right? And so it gravitated me towards so many different avenues. Like I worked at hospitals, right? I did necessary work on hotlines, right? Working with the New York City hotline. So all these things kind of provided this crisis work, this fast pacedness too, right? So like really able to deal with people's emotions on a quicker page, but also still providing that care and sensitivity was really important for me to learn. Um, and now, fast forward in this present day, I'm working with My Therapy NYC in the financial district, and it's focusing on this informed trauma care, right? And a lot of the work that I do, and I could also say with My Therapy NYC collectively, what they do necessarily is wanting to feel, connect, and transform people's lives, right? I think that's so beautiful. But we really feel like each therapist has their, let's say, own modality, I should say, right? That we kind of tap into our clients necessarily innate capacity for their healing, but we do it through relationship, right? A lot of the work that we do is about how can we form this connectivity, this relationship that opens people up, right, for this healing power, because therapy in general can just be ever vulnerable. So allowing people to have that space is really important for them.
I love that. One of the things that I hear in that is um, you're everybody's allowed to like carry their own medicine with
Mhm.
their the clients or their patients, right? When you talk about your own modality, it's like yeah, because we each carry our own medicine and through our
Yeah.
experiences and our lives and the particular training that you had and it could come down to a specific professor or mentor, right? Can kind of influence those things. Um, If you think back to when you're kind of transitioning from the world of academia to the first time you were starting to be active in a practice, and I know that some of, in school you probably had some maybe like rotations or, kind of
Mhm.
that time. But once you got through the kind of certifications and you were stepping out to really begin your practice, what were, if you can remember back to then, any of the challenges that you had to kind of get over to get that wheel going or get that in motion? Maybe it was, you know, where were you going to work or people not, um, you know, I know that there's like some supervision that's required sometimes after school, or maybe you had that part taken care of already. But what were those initial challenges, like finding a place to be able to express the training that you had just gone through?
It was actually quite a little bit challenging. I guess it was a sense of me trying to not only feel like the best fit for myself that allows me to learn even more, right? Some people feel like even after you finish your studies, academia, we're like, okay, we're done. And it's like, well, there's always something to learn, right? We're always going to be growing and changing, right? So why not continue to learn more? But there's a plateau in certain places, there's certain spaces that is like, okay, you finish school, so now you just apply. But there's more that you want to learn, right? There's more that you want to do and become, right? And so I felt like what was challenging necessarily was finding a space that allowed me to spread their wings a little bit more in a way, right? And I think that's also why I gravitated towards My Therapy NYC because it is a valuable place, not only talking about connectivity and using the relationship as a good force, but also the sense of that there's accessibility. And I think that was a challenge, right? Finding places that were accessible to other people who may not necessarily even have therapy as an option, right? Even if we just take away this economy that's going on right now, right? Even before that, there's a stigma that mental health had, right? The sense of like either we don't believe in it or it's not attainable, or maybe we need to do it only when we're at our last wit's end, right? And it's like, okay, those are options. Those are things that you then start thinking about therapy for. But you can also think about therapy even before it gets to the rough parts, right? And I think it's so important that we find spaces that have the accessibility to it, right? And so what I like about My Therapy NYC and this practice that I work with is that we create blogs, right? We create information. We create more learning tools for individuals who may not even be our clients, actually, right? We can go on the website and kind of just like find these blogs and things of that nature. But these blogs educate into people about different mental health trends, about what mental health is, right? I even had the opportunity to do one myself and publish a blog as well, talking about emotions, like really like breaking it down, right? This emotions one-on-one kind of feel, I like to call it. There's a sense of like when it comes to our emotions, people, and this is what I've noticed has been a trend a little bit actually. People have noticed that they feel afraid or ashamed to even bring up their emotions, right? Going back to what I mentioned a little bit before, the sense of like confidence kind of dwindles down when we go through traumatic experiences or just hardships in life. We don't feel like our voice is so powerful. And so a lot of the work that I like to do is bring that power in people's voice and so they can find that and discover that. And so in this blog, I talk about emotions and how it's just indicators for what we want to need, nothing to necessarily shy away. Like there's no good or bad emotions. We simply just are, right? And so it's kind of just being in this force of allowing ourselves to deeply understand that we are going to be responding to our emotions based off of subjective experiences, right? Or physiological responses and behavioral emotions. So, for instance, the holidays are coming, right? This is good. This is great. Now, for some people, maybe not so much, right? There's some emotions that may come up for people in that way, right? So, attending these holiday festivities is a subjective experience, but there may be some physiological responses that we get from this, right? Maybe we feel nervous, maybe we feel um, anxious or maybe down or depressed, all the different things, emotions that may come about from it, right? But then we have these behavioral responses that allow us to necessarily, let's say, feel more in tune with everything that's going on and we feel maybe overstimulated, right? So how do we find places or spaces that allow us to connect to express them, right? So that's why I think what you do here on your podcast and like what we also do behind the scenes and necessary the therapeutic work with me, it's like trying to figure out that space where we're connecting with people, right? So they can feel heard and seen. And so accessibility, this is one of the great examples of what accessibility is, right? Having these spaces to educate, to inform, to just allow people to simply be and express those emotions. So I think that was the most challenging part after academia was to like figure out where can more places not only teach me more, but provide access to people who may not even have access to certain things.
Absolutely. And I'd love for you to maybe enlighten us. How long did it take you to find My Therapy NYC? It wasn't where you just landed right out of school, right? So I just wanted to paint the context for people that it might take a little bit of time, right?
Yeah, it did take some time, right? Um, So after academia, after school, right, we try these jobs and we feel like, okay, this seems good on paper, right? And so we go towards it and it feels nice. And it's like, okay, great. So some of that for me was like um, working with New York City hotlines or being able to kind of deal with crisis work, crisis individuals, hospitals, right? Attending hospitals too as well, working with people with sexual violence, all these things. And so there's a lot of fast paced work that I was doing was kind of like a in and out kind of feeling, right? It's like, how quickly can I work with this patient? How can I necessarily ground them and then move on, right? And yes, I get to work with as many people quickly as I can, but it never felt really in depth. It didn't feel like there was this like we're really hitting the underground work of things, right? I always have to say that between those kind of jobs, I was probably doing that for about a year and a half, actually.
Hmm.
So, being honest, right? Yeah, probably like a year and a half trying to kind of like figure out the best environment for me, right? Necessarily, right? And I would have to say, like, yes, I was still working with my degree and all things, but goes back down to like intentionality, right? It goes back down to like, what am I really passionate about? Or am I reaching underneath the surface of things that I actually want to tend to and the people who I want to respond with, right? And so I had to have hope. I had to have a lot of hope in my journey. And also, I think what's also important too is remembering my why, right? There's a lot of times that motivation will come and go, right? It's not something that always will last all the time. It's great when we have it because we keep that momentum and we keep it going. But there's times where there's days or environments or news that we get that kind of feels like, oh, I don't know. I don't have the motivation to get up out of bed. I don't have the motivation to call a friend to let people know how I feel emotionally. That's vulnerable, that's raw, right? And sometimes we don't have always that peak, right? So I feel like what kind of got me out of that lack of motivation was a sense of remembering my why, remembering my passion, right? And that's going back to me realizing that I want people to feel connected to their voice. I want people to know that they are supposed to be heard and seen. There's power in speaking up and not knowing whether, yes, I'm sad, I'm depressed, or even I'm happy and I am excited. Like, regardless of what the emotions are, there's power in that, right? And so getting people to feel connected to both their light and their dark is what
Mm.
inspired me, what kind of pulled me. So that was my why and that was my mission. And so I was like, oh, wait, Hadiya, let's remember the mission because you're going to go through some environments that speak to you, but maybe no longer resonate with you after time. And that's okay too. Right. So about a year and a half, all that to say.
Yeah, I love that. And, I think sometimes we have to land in a place where we're like, oh, yeah, this isn't exactly what I was asking for. Right? Like you said, it looks good on paper, and then how it feels is like, oh, this got it. Like this is information, right? And the next choice I make is going to be slightly different, a little bit more tuned, right?
I like how you said that, like it's just information, right? It's information that we're like pouring into ourselves. And sometimes we need to go through these experiences in order for us to even feel what that gives a feeling for, right? So yes, I had to go through the different jobs to find a placement that feels more connected to me. And I wouldn't probably have known that I wanted an environment that feels more accessible to other people, right?
Right.
Uh, so yeah, we have to go through those experiences, some difficulties, some little shakeups in order to necessarily kind of get through to be like, wait, is that what I truly want? Is that what I need? And it's all a build up.
And I love how you articulated that there was a lot of faith required and staying true or staying clear about your why, right? And there's a lot of in the world that I come from with addiction and recovery, it that is such a critical piece is people really anchoring that why. And until that why is strong enough, right,
Mhm.
you might not make a change. And so to have that be really clear is such a valuable piece there.
Mhm.
Um, I would love to hear now. So you've got a little bit of time under your belt now at My Therapy NYC. How is it a day in the life there now? What does it look like with client flow and working with the team and being in an organization from what I see, it looks like you guys are touching a lot of lives.
Yeah. It's really important to not only find the environment that speaks to you, or like for my case, wanted to bring more accessibility to everyone's lives, but the fact that they wanted to focus on relationships. And so I feel like we gravitate towards clients that come into our space of My Therapy NYC that want to work on the development of identity a lot, right? Wanting to work on they're they're coming in already vulnerable and willing to kind of work on that, right? So that helps us do our job as well. It's like, okay, you're meeting individuals that are ready to do the work, right? To even make that first step. And so meeting individuals who's willing to make the first step while still kind of like holding their hand along the journey to kind of figure out like what works or what doesn't work. Um, I know that each therapist has their own modality and they kind of show up differently. Each therapist shows up differently in their own space when they're working with clients. But with me, I tend to find clients that are coming from a trauma background, right? And so clients who are focusing on their trauma, wanting to kind of, let's say, not relive the trauma so much, but process it, right? Yes, I can bring you back down to where that trauma was and how it stemmed, but I also want to take with clients about what they've learned from that trauma.
Mm-hmm.
You can always process it. You can be like, okay, yes, you fell down, and okay, this is what has occurred and this is what has happened, but what did we learn from that falling down, right? So we dive a little bit deep in that. So a lot of my clients are focusing on trauma, but also with trauma, we realize too, when we go through traumatic experiences or just hurtful experiences, just disappointing experiences, we also tend to, going back to that voice, we lose that power in our voice, right? Sometimes, especially if we're victims to a lot of our traumas, the person who hurt us the most try to take that power away. Right? And so self-esteem and identity comes to be a major part in the work that I do, right? And so the clients that I see throughout the basis, wanting to work on exploring what that trauma has done for necessarily their self-esteem, their identity, but also how they want to show up in the world now, right? So sometimes that can come with some confusion or just not knowing, right? And so we kind of process that all together, the sense of like, what is it that your relationships look like for you now? What does safe spaces look like for you now, right? What did you learn about yourself through those hardships? And how would you like to articulate that into like, oh, for instance, the new year, right? There's a new season coming up, right? So how would you like to integrate that into the new year, into new sessions? And also the sense of like belonging, right? Wanting to belong in communities and spaces that mean the most to us. And so that's pretty much like what my day to day with working with clients is focusing on. Those are the topics necessary that we're talking about, right? Um, and I just simply just enjoy it, right? It just feels so uh, it's inspiring me. Clients who are willing and ready to do the hard work, who's willing and ready to be vulnerable, um, inspires me to also just want to show up, right? Because it's like, oh, if you're ready to do that, then I can join you. Like I always say that therapy is like not only kind of like entangling the old wounds, but getting down to the personal development of identity. We're forever going to be growing and changing throughout our lives, right? So, what version of us do we want to see now? What version of us feels the most important at this time? And
I,
work.
I love that.
Hmm.
Yeah, I really love that. I think it really speaks to, we're in constant motion.
Yes.
Our lives are in constant motion. We're not static beings, right? And there's seasonality to
Mhm.
the phases of our life, the things that we're working on, the people, that we're going through those different seasons with. Um, I love how that really creates space for that.
Yeah. Yeah. This forever motion that we're kind of evolving into, right? And with My Therapy NYC too, and all of the therapists there, there's a sense of creating community, right? So, like I said, they are accessible to having a blog, or they're creating communities or meet and greets or just group therapy work, right? So like we're always kind of focusing on relationships, right? Um, and so my other therapists that I work with too are also just focused on that too. How can we build these relationships that form a space of vulnerability and healing?
Any challenges that you're finding in your practice, whether it's, maybe in working inside of an organization with your team, or I guess it could even be systems or getting clients, to show up to their appointments. Is there anything that you find as kind of something that you're regularly up against?
Hmm. Let's see. Yeah. So the challenge necessary that I feel like at least what's now said I've been working with My Therapy NYC for 2 years now. So that means about like 2 years worth of clients that I have also been working with too. And maybe it's the seasons that's coming up, that's changing, the economy, all the different things. But I feel like what has been difficult necessarily is getting people to accept their emotions, accept things that we cannot change, right? Of course, we see everything that's evolving, our environment's changing, and It's heartfelt. It's disappointing at times. It's hard to see, hard to bear. But I feel like what really stops people from wanting to kind of move forward or even kind of dive in sometimes is just accepting that there's emotions that come up from seeing these things, right? Some people are feeling not fearful, but sometimes there's shame or just guilt or just a lack of understanding of wanting to accept that they feel sad, that they're feeling depressed, accept that they're anxious. People can feel really annoyed about some of those things, right? Like, oh, I'm mad again. Yeah, there's things that's coming up, right? Or I'm upset that I'm sad, or that I'm still feeling like I'm in my depressive episodes and other things. And like, it's okay to be in those emotions and those feelings. And of course, like society tells us that we should not necessarily be in those hardships, right? Or be sad for too long. You gotta, you know, get up and get going and moving, right? And so it taught us this, and I like to talk about this with my clients, this storyline, this narration, and that we don't, we can be sad for too long, right? It tells us that it's weak, or we should
Mhm.
be in these kind of emotions or be in this heaviness. And it's interesting too, because we approach these wellness spaces with the sense of like, okay, yes, I'm in therapy, so I get to express my emotions. But when they actually end up doing the work, it's like, oh wait, this is too scary. I gotta sit in this for like a 45-minute to 60-minute session of just being in my sadness. Well, yeah, right. And we work on that, of course, but it's important. It's important, right? So going back to that dark and light. So I feel like that's the challenging thing, getting people to just accept that emotions are going to be hard. It is going to be vulnerable. We're not going to always have good days, and that's okay. That doesn't make you a bad person. That doesn't make you less than, right? So people tend to feel behind. And I try my best to kind of make sure that clients don't feel behind, to be like, actually, you being able to express those emotions are actually putting you in a place of vulnerability, and there's power in that. There's power in being able to stand in to be like, actually, today's a sad day. Oh, okay. Like you can release that, right? Instead of trying to like hold that back or kind of like create these storylines in our minds from other people or society that it's bad to just be in those emotions.
Right. Yeah, I really love that. And part of one of the things that I hear that was kind of working through what you were saying is this willingness to be uncomfortable,
Mm. Yeah.
right? Like it can be uncomfortable to be in our emotions. It can be uncomfortable to talk about them or to, want to share.
Mhm.
And in, the work that I've been in and with clients, it's one of the things that I see come up pretty regularly is we will do things to avoid the discomfort, right?
Mhm.
Kind of shy away from that.
Yeah.
And I really like what you were expressing, which is kind of an invitation to, hey, it's okay, right? It's
Mhm.
okay to be uncomfortable in the emotion, it's okay to let it out, it's okay to have it.
For sure, right? And that's just a whole societal thing, right? The sense of like we can't necessarily sit in that, right?
Mhm.
Uh, it's interesting too because like I feel like when we allow space to, and just like what we're doing too, we're allowing space for people to kind of like tap in, right? To kind of sit with themselves, to sit with their emotions, to sit with their identity. When we do that, there's a sense of stillness that comes from that. And I like how you mentioned this too, like we're so quick to kind of like distract ourselves from that emotion. Like, oh, I'm feeling sad. Yes, let's do a coping skill. Let's kind of just use some of our vices maybe, or just like distract ourselves with work and all the things, or work is a big one too for a lot of people, right? Let me distract myself from work and all the things,
Guilty.
right? And that happens, right? That happens too, right? And there's sometimes a sense of feeling like, oh, I'm not doing enough, so let me get into it, right? And so I like that there's passion, there's that pull, there's that excitement of like, okay, I'm sitting in this emotion. I don't want to sit in too long. Let me do something productive. I love that people have that, right? I love that we have that. That's innate. That's like, okay, we have that willpower to keep going. That's that determination factor. So that's beautiful. But what happens when we also kind of be in that stillness too? We also learn, right? So sometimes we need to be in that dark and we need to be in that stillness to kind of figure out what is it that it's telling me, right? Do I need something else? Do I need reassurance? Do I need some sense of guidance? Do I just need a peace and quiet? Like, what is it that I need? So I'm like, "Oh,
And yeah, that really ties back into one of the things that you were saying at the beginning, which is being able to learn the lesson from it, right?
no.
Like, can we can we quiet long enough to listen for the lesson?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. Can we be in this quiet? Can we be in this stillness to find that voice, to find that reason, to find that why? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that. A great little section right there.
Yes, yes.
What I guess what I want to ask is um who's like your ideal client? Do you have a like people that are working through particular things that you're like, yeah, these are when this is the like, great alignment for me.
Yeah, yeah. So being, with crisis work being my first kind of introduction to the mental health space, right? Being in the hospitals or being just on the hotlines and all things. There's this sense of coming with people who have these long history of stories of just now. I know I'm going to say this out loud, and we're going to be like, Hadiya, why would you say that's your favorite client? But someone who has been through some traumatic things, right? Someone who has been through things that left them with this feeling of what now,
Mm,
right? Left them with this feeling of when someone comes to me and says that their power was taken, right? Or they necessarily feel like they don't know who they are. Oh, yes, let's bring that into the space. Let's talk about that, right? Because that gives me the opportunity to remind people that we're forever going to be changing and growing. And sometimes people tend to forget that. They think that, oh, wait, but I'm not the same person I was 2 years ago. Heck, I'm not the same person I was like probably like 3 weeks ago. Right? I probably like I'll probably have a different coffee order now, right? I'm gonna move my body differently now because the seasons are coming up, right? So all these things are going to be changing. But sometimes we go back to that. We want to be like, oh wait, because I'm not the same person I was like 3 weeks ago to a couple years ago. I have to strive to go back to that person. But we don't. We don't. And sometimes trauma, because we have gone through traumatic experiences, we tend to get tunnel visioned. And so we tend to allow ourselves to find things that support that trauma, right? So it pulls us into the same direction sometimes. So even when things feel uncomfortable, we may find experiences or people that feel a little bit similar to that traumatic experience, right? I may not like someone who's mean to me, but I may subconsciously go to someone who may be mean just because it's something I'm used to, right? Without even knowing it, right? So sometimes we miss the red flags. Sometimes we go to the same restaurant that we know that we really don't like, but we're gonna give it the benefit of doubt and be like, maybe another dish will be okay. Right. And so there's these things that kind of come up and we subconsciously go to it. So the type of client that I like to work with is someone who comes to me like, hey, I had this traumatic or this hurtful experience and I really feel lost. I don't know who I am right now. I love that because not only are they being vulnerable, right? Not only do I get to, of course, use my crisis and trauma background, yay, school, right? But I also get a chance to let people know that, okay, let's figure out what that power is. How can we store that power back within you? And it's not, may not look like the same person that you were when you were dealing with that trauma, dealing with that hurt, dealing with that pain, right? So they come that accepting piece coming in, right? Like, how can we accept that? While also be able to be curious, right? I think that's important too, to be curious into the nature of like, yeah, I don't know who I am. So I now have this blank canvas. And sometimes that's scary for people, but with that blank canvas, you have so much room to create, so much room to explore. And so I like when people come in with that because we can get curious about ourselves.
yeah, that's a wonderful space to be in. I have a pair of mentors, a husband and wife couple that they talk about and they teach about the importance of disorientation.
Mhm.
How it's disorientation is this mechanism that helps us bring our head up and be like, oh wait, where am I going?
Mhm.
Right? It's a space to reorient and kind of look at the compass and be like, oh yeah, this is actually the direction that I want to go. Okay, let's go over there. Right. So that very much resonates. For anybody that's out there listening, um, I know that at least My Therapy NYC does both in-person and remote therapy.
Mhm.
Is that the same for you as well?
Are you saying that? Yes, yes, we do. So we do virtual,
You
right?
do virtual, right?
And we also do in person. And I think I'm glad that we have an option because during the pandemic, there's a lot of people who also didn't were ready to kind of go back into in-person spaces. And so we like to give the options for both.
And
Uh,
I guess I was asking specifically, you personally will do both? You'll do virtual and in person?
yes, yes. So I do in person and also do virtual as well too.
And
Mhm.
so are you able to work with anybody regardless of where they live?
Well, that only just due to my license, because my license is only in the state of New York. So I only get to be virtual with people in the state of New York.
Okay. So for those that are listening that are in New York and would be interested in maybe following up or reaching out to you, what are the best ways that they can do that? How do they find you?
Yeah. So of course you can go to the group practice mytherapynyc.com. That's also somewhere too, where you have a plethora of therapists that you can choose from as well. Get to read their bios. And also when we talk about accessibility, you get to see some of the blogs that us therapists have created as well as mine own as well. Um, Also, I have my own website too. It's called www.essentialvoicetherapy.com. That's also a way where you can see some of my information too, as well as also some um, videos that I have created or podcast episodes that I've created that allows you to be inspired as well.
Amazing. We'll make sure to link those below so people can find you directly very easily. Is there a I want to kind of bring it back home here, and I guess I'll leave it up to you. Do you have anything that you'd like to express that maybe we haven't touched on yet, or a message for the listeners that you'd like to share?
Yeah. Mhm. For one, I'm really proud of you listeners for allowing yourself to even come into the space to listen, right? It talks to me and tells us that you're ready to do the work. You're ready to be part of the work, right? And so that's beautiful. Um, but I just actually have one question. Here's the therapist in me that actually has one question for you guys, is necessarily um, as we're winding down towards the end of the season, end of the year, right? Think about some ways of some things that you have learned about yourself this year. What have you learned about yourself that you like to bring into 2026? And kind of really think about that. Sit in that stillness that we talked about here today and kind of dive in to be like, what did I learn about myself this year? And how would you like to apply that or amplify that in the new year?
Oh, I love that. Thank you so much for that invitation. I'm gonna go through that practice when we're done here, and I invite anybody who's watching or listening, if you feel courageous, to share in the comments what it is that you've learned and that you're bringing in to 2026. So share that with us. Let's be in it together. I love that invitation. Thank you so much.
Great. I'm excited to read it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. So thank you again so much for taking some time with us today. It's a delight to get to hear about your practice, your journey, and the work that you're doing there in New York City. And thank you to everybody who's tuned in. This is another episode of the Conscious Solutions podcast. Every conversation reminds us that systems of care are only as strong as the people within them. And if today's episode resonated, please share it forward. My name is Brandon Barclay. Stay present, stay curious, and keep building with heart. Thanks for listening to the Conscious Solutions podcast and for being part of a movement that supports the people who support the people. If today's conversation inspired you, share it forward, follow the show, and stay connected for upcoming episodes. And if you're a founder, a practitioner, or an organization doing meaningful work in the healing or wellness space, or you're looking for support in building systems that help your mission grow, reach out. I'd love to hear your story and explore what's possible. Until next time, stay curious and keep building with heart.